ready, tell me, are we doing roll call? Okay. All right, good morning, everybody. We are here for informational hearing on restarting the arts best practices for safely reopening. We are the Committee of Arts, Entertainment, Sports, Tourism, and Internet Media. And we have a jam-packed agenda today, and we are very excited for all of the professionals and experts in this area to join us. I'm Assemblymember Sharon Quirk-Silva, and we welcome you here. We also welcome our new Vice Chair, Suzette Valderas, and she will be making some brief remarks, and our committee member, Dr. Stephen Choi, I see out there. Before we begin, we have some housekeeping, and we will be practicing not only physical distancing in this hearing, but also throughout the state capitol. We have very limited space, so our speakers will be coming to you remotely. We encourage those that are watching that they can go onto the Assembly webpage to call in during the public comments segment of this hearing. The number to call can be found on our committee website or on the screen later on during this hearing. This is the second in a series of hearings that this committee will hold on the impact of COVID-19 and on the people and businesses in California's arts, tourism, and sports industries. We held a first informational hearing in October, and that was on the economic power and resilience of California's tourism industry, where the committee not only learned firsthand from some of the tourists or those who provide tourism and entertainment, the difficulties and challenges they faced. And we know that that has been deep and unwavering in this pandemic. We also were able to bring to you an array of interest groups to work with that work within the tourist industry, and this hearing brought perspectives on the economic impacts of the pandemic and wildfires, as well as the proposals for how California's tourism industry can recover. Now, almost 4 months later, we are going to be focusing on our artists and those who work with them. As we know, the arts, culture, and creative economy sectors have been among the hardest hit by this coronavirus and pandemic. We also know that arts and entertainment are also some of the most therapeutic ways that people can help and begin to recover. So today we will be hearing from a forum from museums, galleries, performance venues to share with the legislature their experiences with the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in the impact of stay-at-home orders on their businesses and staff, and of course from the artists themselves. We want you to know the efforts that the government has been making so far, and we also want to make sure that our governor's office is understanding that we are asking for greater assistance. We are also soliciting best practices for reopening from you, those of you who are in the industry, and how to best reopen, either not only from examples from other countries, but from other states, and also looking again at our administrative orders that have come down from our Department of Health and Governor Newsom. Your experiences will be very helpful for our members to hear as we move into our second legislative session under this pandemic. As you can see, the agenda is jam-packed, very robust. We wanted to make sure we could get as many voices in. That being said, we need to stick to the agenda as much as possible. We'll be asking members to make their comments brief, and after our first panel speaks, we also want to make sure that we are witnesses, that you stay on time. We appreciate so much you joining us, but we want you to be aware of your time. And again, we're going to move forward, and I would like to invite our new Vice Chair, Suzette Valderas, to make some opening comments.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman. And I am excited to be here and in my very first committee hearing meeting with you, and really at a critical time for the arts industry. In the 38th Assembly District, big and small, whether it's the Reagan Library, Six Flags Magic Mountain, our Canyon Theater Guild, this industry has been hit particularly hard, and I'm excited to have this conversation about restarting the arts and to really look at sustainability and how we not only open, but we come back stronger than ever. And I'm excited to hear everyone's ideas, thoughts, and to be a part of the conversation. Thank you.
And I do see is that our, yes, Senator Ben Ellen has joined us. And as he's joined us, we definitely left to have him make some opening remarks. Senator.
Let's see here. Here we go. Great to be here. Obviously, want to thank the chair, who also serves as vice chair to the Joint Committee on the Arts, which is our joint legislative committee that looks at a lot of these issues. I know there are a couple of our joint committee members who are following the meeting remotely. Very important topic, something that our committee has been looking at as well. And so I'm just happy to be here. And we just know how much our friends in the arts community have been suffering. And we've got to figure out ways to allow them to get back online in a safe way, but that also allows them to continue to do their work. So really, I'm impressed with the folks who are on this list. I want to thank the staff, including our own Joint Committee staff, for helping to put this together. Lauren Pizer-Mains, and looking forward to the discussion.
Yes, and I also appreciate being vice chair of the Arts Council, and look forward when we both can work together to get out into the community, where our whole goal here is to get these venues open safely, and that we can get out and actually participate in the arts together. Thank you so much. I know coming across the way over here to the greenhouses, we appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, and it's a much bigger room.
Yes. And again, I'm already breaking the time, but I'll just do it because I know our members got here on time, and they will be in and out. But let me, Dr. Stephen Choi, do you have any opening comments before we jump in?
Thank you for asking me. I am so happy to meet with the new makeup of this committee. I served from the prior session on this committee. I think this committee is probably responsible for wider spectrum of our industry than any other committees. It includes arts, entertainment, sports, tourism, and internet media. We can talk about these issues all day long, and these are so important. As Chairman agendizes specific items as we meet, I will be happy to participate because there are many issues that currently we are facing because of COVID-19 situation, such as sports, and then also recent drama that we have seen in the social media with the freedom of speech issue. How I am really concerned about, what has happened, and we have witnessed like abridging our freedom of speech under the name of a private company. So many things that we can talk about. But anyway, I will just listen and see how today's presenters will make us better informed committee members.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. And Assemblymember Friedman?
Thank you very much. First, I wanted to congratulate the chair and vice chair. Looking forward to working with you both. Like many people in California, I moved to Los Angeles to accept a job in the film industry at Paramount Pictures after working in New York for HBO and other companies. A lot of my constituents either work in entertainment or in industries that are tangentially related to entertainment and hospitality. I represent Hollywood, 5 film studios in my district, and have a long history in the industry, and as well as having a lot of live venues, the Greek Theater and the Alex Theater and many others. And this is the story all across California. Tourism, entertainment is really fundamental to our identity as Californians. So giving guidance to this industry, giving them clear benchmarks, clear roadmap to follow is crucial for our entire economy and our identity as California, because losing those industries would be a huge blow to what makes California so special. Our creative economy, which also helps fuel Silicon Valley and all things that are intellectual capital. So I want to commend the chair for setting up this hearing. I'm really, really grateful for you for doing that, and I look forward to participating today. Thanks.
Thank you. And then I did see one of our Assemblymember Nazarian. Do you have any comments? We're going to, after this, keep very close to the agenda. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with our first.
Madam Chair.
Where are you?
Madam Chair, it's David Chu,
I'm
participating
sorry.
virtually. That's okay. Do you mind if I make just
Yes,
a
of
brief
course. I
opening
didn't
comment?
see you there. Okay, welcome,
worries.
Assembly Member.
Thank you. Good morning. First of all, Madam Chair, really appreciate you and committee staff for convening such a great panel on such an important conversation. In an earlier part of my life, I was an amateur musician, and it was through that I made some spending money to get through school. And today I represent a city of San Francisco that is an artistic capital, not only for the Bay Area, but for our state. Our city has not only very large, internationally known institutions, but smaller community-based organizations and a very vibrant but struggling arts community. And I can certainly speak, as others have, for our city and our region, that the arts are not only a reflection of our community and our vision for the world, but an enormous economic driver, a jobs driver, a tourism driver. And so this is incredibly timely. And I want to just note that from my perspective, before COVID, arts funding and support was something I didn't think our state had prioritized in the way that it should. I think the members of this committee believe that we can do more and should do more. But certainly during COVID, with so many dire crises, it has again been hard to prioritize the arts. And we are at deep risk of losing many important institutions and artists. So I just wanted to say just how much I appreciate the engagement today, and look forward to the conversation. We'll be taking lots of notes. I unfortunately will be toggling between a couple of meetings, but rest assured my staff and I are tracking this, and we look forward to working with our chair and our committee members and others to advance the cause of the arts in California. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Chu. And
Can I get, Madam Chair, I'd like to
goodness.
let you know that I'm on here too. We're all popping up.
We're all zooming in from different angles. So there we have Assembly Member Kamala Doug, who will be saying some initial comments. There you go.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you also for convening this hearing. It's one of my most favorite committees because I'm so passionate about the arts. And I certainly believe that if there is any sector out there that can save us, it is the arts community. And echoing the sentiments of my colleague from San Francisco, you know, the arts have been woefully underfunded in the state of California, and we have really asked our arts community to find ways to save us all and fund themselves. And I think during this time of COVID, when we have actually relied on artists to help us translate information, heal folks, make folks feel safe, distract folks from other things that they're hearing on the news or their own anxieties, it should be a reminder to the state that we must deeply fund and support our artists. So I'm very interested in hearing from our speakers today. It is a jam-packed hearing. I'm especially curious to know how our smaller venues have been surviving and what they need from us, 99-seat theaters, outdoor venues, how museums, but also galleries, what kind of support they need to safely reopen and to stay open. And then at some point, I'm very interested in artists' rights, because since we have had to transition from live and in-person activities where there seems to be a very clear delineation between art and sort of operator, now that we're streaming and sharing information using technology, I would love for us to at some point have a deeper discussion about artist rights and sort of who owns what's being shared, since we're using new technologies. It might seem a little ambiguous, but I know for actors and musicians who are used to creating their own work and then sharing it on a stage, these new devices could complicate some of those discussions. But thank you so much for convening this, and I'm very excited to hear what folks have to say.
Thank you, Assemblymember Kalmager. Very good questions. And if some of the panelists have heard the initial comments and the concerns by the members, it would be great if you could address those in your comments. That being said, we're going to start our first panel, which is California and the Arts, Challenges and Programs to Support the Arts. We have 5 panelists on this. What we'll do is go straight from one panelist to the other without any questions in between. Again, we ask the panelists to stay on time. Our first presenter is Adam Fowler, from the Director of Research, Beacon Economies and California Creative Economy. Welcome, Adam.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Thank you. Hopefully you can see my slides as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We see your slides, but we don't see you, unless you're...
Okay.
Okay, that's how it's going to be. Yes.
Fabulous. Okay, thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm here today in my 5 minutes to talk briefly about the work our firm, Beacon Economics, has been doing for the upcoming 2021 Otis Creative Economy Report that will be released later this month. I'd like to share some of our research from over the past 6 months, some of the quantitative as well as qualitative findings we've been seeing as we've looked at the economic data, the demographic data, and talked to stakeholders across the ecosystem all across California. The creative economy, I always like to remind folks and push on, is part of the economy. So oftentimes, questions about the arts are often treated as other, as a nice option to have if everything else is taken care of. I'd like to push back today a little bit against that notion. We see the arts as a vibrant part, a very important part of California's economy. Talking about the larger labor market, since the depths of the downturn in April, we've only recovered 44% of our jobs in California. In December, there were 1.5 million fewer people employed in the state than in February 2020. Our non-farm employment has contracted roughly 8% since February. This pace of growth, this recovery, trails the nation overall, where the number of jobs has only shrunk by 6.5%. The COVID-19 crisis poses significant losses to the creative economy. And for rural parts of the state, arts, culture, creativity, these are some of the key sectors that drive our regional economies. They're so very important when we look at economic drivers in our rural areas. By their very nature, many of the constituent parts of the creative economy necessitate the congregation of large groups of unrelated people, people that aren't in the same household, often in very close proximity, given the nature of our real estate markets in California. We have to use space creatively. When the venue is a small local bar, a large outdoor concert venue, an arts museum, these were the first industries we saw take a hit. And we expect them to be the last ones to make a full recovery. I think that's important. The first out and the last back. In our report, we break these down into 5 kind of global industry sectors as seen on the screen. At the end of the month, we'll be releasing the Otis report, which will capture all of 2020 with a special chapter on the COVID-19 impact. It's going to be a little bit different of a report this year, but in the fall, when we began our analysis, I will draw your attention to some numbers. These will be updated, as I mentioned, in the end of the month, but for now, I think they give a good indication, as there's been very little recovery going into November, December. When we talk about the cultural industries, we include film, advertising, visual arts, as well as those occupations that may be housed in non-creative industries. Performers, architects, graphic designers that may work at firms that aren't in a creative industry. They come from the same workforce development pipeline, the same ecosystem of nonprofit participants, educational facilities. In addition to the direct contributions, the arts and cultural sector supports a large number of other professions, both upstream and downstream. As you see here, in the fall in August, we estimated roughly 280,000 jobs lost, missing, temporarily furloughed in California. This has a huge impact for those suppliers up the food chain, up the supply chain, and for those folks that use that wage income to participate in their local economy. There are some inherent structural occupations that make arts workers particularly vulnerable to these underlying changes. One of the main notes is that folks are 3.5 times more likely to be self-employed in the arts. We have to leverage a number of different data sources, and thankfully, because of the CARE Act, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program has allowed those folks to continue to exhibit normal household spending behavior. As I come up on my time, I would say nowhere has the impact been more direct and more immediate than the performing arts. And we've seen a nationwide decline in tax-exempt revenue in the third quarter of roughly 54%. This is devastating. As we look forward to what recovery looks like in the state, it is our recommendation that any economic development recovery, any resilience narrative include the arts. They're such a valuable, important player, and there's a lot that can be done. A lot of our local regulatory framework does not allow for the rebound of the arts in the ways that the industries are changing. We have a lot of control over how we curate our economic regulatory system locally, and with a lens on equity, with a lens on growth, and a lens on resilience, it's an important time. We don't see an economic recovery that we want to be a part of without the arts front and center. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Adam Fowler, and we are hearing that loud and clear that the arts need to be part of any recovery plan. We'll then now move to Ann Brown Crawford, who is the Executive Director of the California Arts Council. Welcome, Ann.
Good morning. Thank you to the chair and members. I'm Ann Brown Crawford.
Excuse me, we have the wrong camera on. We have, there we go. There's Ann. All right, hi Ann,
Great.
welcome.
Thank you so much. And I'll thank you again, to chair and members. Again, I'm Ann Brown Crawford, Executive Director of the California Arts Council, supporting artists and arts organizations throughout California. We're so grateful for the work that you do, and thank you for convening this important hearing. I'll get my slides up here.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of a hard time. You're kind of going in and out.
I apologize for that. I'm up here in Humboldt County, where broadband is often an issue. So
Yeah, we see your presentation.
let me know. Okay, good. The California Arts Council is our state's only public arts grants provider with funding that's accessible to all 58 counties. Every state has a state arts agency. As California's state arts agency, we prioritize racial equity, and have a broad geographic reach into communities of all sizes. As you just heard, the arts sector is large and diverse, and its businesses and workforce are a significant contributor to our state economy and our identity. As I join you here today, we were all struck by the fact, always, that our world is, in this moment, filled with deeply impactful words, poetry, song, and speeches of hope, justice, and reconciliation. These words, including those from our youth, speak to meeting the challenges that are swirling all around us with clear eyes and determination. At the same time, we at the California Arts Council know full well that we face hard work to live up to the aspirations and hope that have allowed us a little bit of space to breathe a bit more freely. We acknowledge that we're all still in the midst of so many crises: deadly virus, vast inequities, systemic racism, economic disparities, violence, and hate. We recognize that the persistence and fervor with which the arts sector tackled the pandemic nearly a year ago still remains, but weariness has also set in, and rightfully so. My slides are not advancing. Let's see. There we go. Everything is lagging. Less than 2 weeks ago, the world did not know the name Amanda Gorman. With one poem, this young artist from California lifted up a nation, and in many ways, the whole world. Amanda's poem, The Hill We Climb, expressed what so many were feeling, so many things that had been unsaid, while it also spoke to her truth with honesty and conviction. And next week, Amanda will be the first poet to perform at a Super Bowl. Oh, there we go. Those of us in the arts are not surprised by this. We're not surprised that a young artist can astonish a nation. As an arts educator that worked in rural California public schools for many years and designed and implemented creative education models for the California Department of Education, I'm not surprised that a young poet from California had the power to give an entire country the gift of hope, healing, and joy through their words. That artist spoke truth. And through Amanda's words, the power of the arts reached the hearts of people nationwide in a way so many others have failed to do. But those of us in the arts can well imagine what it would be like if Amanda's voice was not on stage. We can imagine the huge gap in our collective healing and hope if artists are not present. The support for community arts programs is often threatened and precarious. Programs like those that nurtured Amanda's voice as a young person. We know that those programs easily could not have existed because they are not seen as essential. We know that too many people in our state do not have the same opportunities in their communities. I wanted to take the time to talk about this because this one example, this one powerful young voice, beautifully and simply demonstrates the power of the arts. This story speaks to the core of why the arts are essential, not optional. And this is why our arts businesses and cultural workers cannot be left behind in unprecedented time. As a sector, it contributes so much to so many. Culture is the strongest signifier of California's identity. As a state agency, the California Arts Council supports local arts infrastructure and programming statewide through grants, programs, and services. As California's state art agency, the council continues to lead with equity, prioritizing communities with the greatest needs. We support local arts infrastructure and programming in every corner of the state through grants, initiatives, and services. The Arts Council is a trusted resource for those most affected by COVID-19. And according to state labor data, the art sector has some of the greatest job losses nationwide. State EDD data shows that the arts, entertainment, and recreation industry saw a decrease of 40.3% in employment from March to August. a larger impact than the 27% decrease seen in the leisure and hospitality industry as a whole. I just want to repeat that. California art sector experienced a 40.3 decrease in employment compared to the 27% decrease in leisure and hospitality sector, according to EDD. There's no doubt that the arts as a sector has been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And I know you'll hear many more data points and stories demonstrating this today. Our sector, however, is vital to the relief and recovery efforts of the state. Artists support mental and physical health outcomes and community resilience and rebuilding. We've seen this after devastating wildfires, and the same is true now. I'll take a moment to share a little bit more about the California Arts Council and how we work. The budget, policies, and allocations for our local assistance grant making are set by a policy council consisting of 11 citizens. 1 is appointed by the Senate, 1 by the Assembly, and 9 by the governor. These are dedicated community members who lead our public grant making process. And I'm pleased that you'll hear from one of our council members in just a few moments. As a gubernatorial appointee, I'm executive director of our state art agency. The agency is responsible for the implementation of council's local assistance grant programs and state operational activities, programs, and services. I'll share a few words about each of these areas in which we work. First, grants. The council invests in California community organizations, local units of government, and creative individuals via competitive grant programs that are administered through a multi-step public process. The staff administers the council's grant programs. In response to COVID-19, the council has a strong vision for how grants will bolster recovery to preserve jobs and stabilize arts organizations with equity at the center. Next, programs. Through an interagency partnership with CDCR, we fund a growing number of organizations who coordinate arts classes with all adult correctional institutions in the state. We also support the field through numerous initiatives that the legislature is involved in, including Poetry Out Loud, the Poet Laureate Program, and the State Cultural Districts Program, among others. And last, services. We administer the state's largest free web database of arts jobs and artist opportunities on our website. We offer public workshops and training opportunities, produce reports, and provide valuable information services to the public, including a weekly e-newsletter. Thank you for this opportunity and for your continued support in the California Arts Council, arts organizations, and cultural workers throughout the state of California. I hope through today's hearing you'll join us in believing that creating a better tomorrow means being here for the arts today. Before I pass the mic, our council chair, Larry Baza, was scheduled to speak next, and unfortunately, he's under the weather and can't join today, but he extends his gratitude for the opportunity. He asked that I share a few items from his scheduled remarks about the work of the council body. Chair Baza wanted to remind the committee that the CAC's state budget was reduced by more than 90% in 2003, with wide-reaching implications. From 2003 to 2013, California was the last in the nation in arts funding per capita at 15 cents, 11% of the national average of $1.35 at that time. The field still vividly remembers those times and the tremendous loss that impacted so many communities, particularly marginalized communities without any other funders to take place of what the Arts Council had been doing. And truly the impact is still visible today in many ways. In recent years, thanks to the support of our elected officials, we've been rebuilding our position as a statewide funder in meaningful ways. When the council held its first virtual meeting last April, the devastating impact to the arts sector was immediately apparent. This led the council to prioritize continuity of services while pivoting as needed to support the field. In May, the council pivoted to establish a $1 million rapid relief grant for funding individual artists. These artists represented socially vulnerable communities most highly impacted by the pandemic, addressing racial inequities. In record time, the funds were in the hands of artists. And this year, the council is in the process of establishing another round of similar support. The council also distributed more than $700,000 in Federal CARES Act funding throughout our county arts partners. More than 40 counties opted to develop re-granting programs that funded arts organizations serving communities of color most disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. As they quickly got to work on their next grant cycle, which is currently open for applications, we had multiple public listening sessions led by the council to develop new general operating support and direct grants to individuals, a shift from the Arts Council's regular project-based funding priorities. You've heard us talk about the Arts Council's racial equity priorities. Chair Baza wanted to share that part of the role of the council members is ensuring that the arts are prioritized by our state. This is reflected in our new mission statement, strengthening arts and culture and creative expression as a tool to cultivate a better California for all. Exactly 1 year ago, council and agency adopted a new strategic framework and racial equity statement after a year-long public process. With this framework, the CAC committed to actively addressing barriers to equity and participation for all Californians. This requires listening carefully to stakeholders and making and communicating decisions that some facets of the public may resist. This public process confirmed that racial injustice must be prioritized, as it is the most pervasive and entrenched form of injustice permeating the institutions and systems that everyone must access. Our equity goal is to create a sense of belonging that is so palpable it is universally experienced. Pursuit of racial justice benefits everyone by taking a critical eye to systems of oppression, systems that undercut fairness across multiple demographics, conditions, and experiences. While in some ways the pandemic has interrupted the implementation of our new framework, disparity brought to light by this past year reinforce the commitments we've made. Chair Baza recognizes the great responsibility and opportunity facing the council. This is a painful time for all of our communities. For those experiencing many forms of loss, it's an unbearably hard time for those whose livelihoods come from the arts. Chair Baza wants to thank Senator Atkins for appointing him to the council and to Senator Allen, Chair of the Joint Committee on the Arts, for always valuing our sector's contributions. Thank you again to the chair and committee members for providing this forum and for listening to these important statewide issues through today's hearing.
Thank you, Anne, not only for your comments, but also for Larry Baza, the chair. Those graphs are very shocking, not only of the investment that we saw back earlier in year before the pandemic, but then the sharp decline. And I think that is part of our role as a body of legislators, is to make sure that we look at investing in arts, not because it's a creative economy, but because we know that that investment in turn turns into jobs and dollars in our economy. All right, so next we have Lilia Gonzalez Chavez, who's the vice chair that will be presenting. And she is the vice chair of the California Arts Council. Welcome, Lilia.
Hello, Madam Chair, committee members. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'm Lilia Gonzalez Chavez, the vice chair of the California Arts Council. I'm pleased to join my colleagues in testifying today to the challenges facing our sector and to our perspectives as your state Arts Council. I'm a new member to the Arts Council, appointed by Governor Newsom in February 2020, just 1 month before the pandemic began. But I'm not new to the arts in California or to the state arts process. As a native of Fresno County, I have been an active advocate for the arts for over 40 years. I served on the board of the Fresno Art Museum and the board of the Fresno Arts Council prior to being appointed executive director of the council 10 years ago. I also served as an appointee of Governor Brown on the board of trustees of the state summer school for the arts. And I am a founding member of Arte Americas, the Latino Cultural Arts Center in Fresno. As Director Ann Bowen Crawford just shared, our council has a strong vision for how CAC grants can bolster recovery to preserve jobs and stabilize arts organizations, with equity at the center. Though it's true that our resources only go so far. While we've carefully seen state funding return to the Arts Council, that was gratefully seen state funding return to the Arts Council. I will be honest, as a community arts advocate for many years before joining the council, I have been reminded time and time again that it's not enough. The Arts Council does so much with so little, stretching every dollar of our $26 million annual general fund allocation for grants. The Arts Council is known for being incredibly efficient in its distribution of grants and is recognized as a model grant maker by other state agencies. Though it's well known that the agency is greatly understaffed to serve the largest and most diverse state in the nation. You will hear today from so many amazing individuals and organizations, and no doubt know of many organizations doing this vital work in your local districts. And we hope to hear from the public about the great organizations that the Arts Council serves and the wide reach of the state's arts investment. The Arts Council's current grantees are arts organizations that directly represent the diversity of our state's communities, with young people, veterans, youth impacted by justice system, returned citizens, and California's historically marginalized communities, key among them. Our California context, meaning our vast geographies and diverse cultures, requires attention and care to continue to thrive. Where you live, your race, your income should not impact your ability to experience the benefits of the arts and creative expression. There are so many disparities to accessing local funding. The state can play an important role in bringing equity to the unique realities faced in underserved communities across the state, like the Central Valley. As the director of a state local partner to the California Arts Council, I had the opportunity to participate in the recent distribution of Federal CARES Act funding. I am pleased to share that we were able to leverage the $15,000 we received to grant, and we're able to add an additional $25,000 in local support for a total of $40,000 to distribute, with a focus on reaching people of color and underserved rural arts programs. Across California, marginalized communities with limited access to funding are also the same communities that are likely to face significant disparities in health, education, social justice, and employment. We all know this pandemic has illuminated geographic and racial inequities in so many ways. And this is particularly true in a sector like the arts, where funding was already scarce and challenged well before the pandemic. All of this comes at a time when there is an outcry from the field that the arts and creativity should be vital to all sectors and not thought of as something separate from the rest of life. There is a push to incorporate art meaningfully and completely into the fabric that binds our daily lives, and to recognize that the arts can be a tool for solving the pressing issues facing society today. If that is accomplished, no one will be left out from creating or enjoying the arts, and every sector will have a role to play. The California Arts Council exists to strengthen the field of the arts and culture, and to champion the truth that arts are essential, not optional, in addressing the challenges facing our communities today and in the future. Collectively, with our family of artists, arts organizations, community partners, elected officials, and the public, the Arts Council can help preserve and protect our unique identity as Californians and place arts, culture, and creativity at the center of our communities. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to join today's hearing. It is an honor to be part of supporting how we can all work together to restart the arts in order to nurture communities, large and small, urban and rural, all across California.
Thank you, Lilia Gonzalez Chavez, Vice Chair of the California Arts Council. Ladies and gentlemen that are watching, and to all of our panelists coming forth, we have set forth a very robust agenda and already have heard incredible information on data and charts and where we are. I would make a plea to all of our panelists coming forth that you speak to Californians straightforward, and if you can, really paint the picture, speaking of a metaphor, paint the picture of a story and telling us something that our Californians who are listening may not understand about your organization, may not understand by a graph or chart, but also to our governor's office and our other legislators, that they can really leave here with a compelling story. Using the example of Amanda Gorman, which we know as we saw her speak live, I know myself, I stopped and I sat down and I listened. And so please, we want to keep all your presentations and the charts, those will be made available, but I'm asking if you'll just set aside the script just a tiny bit so we can get everybody in, and we really want to get to know you by your testimony. That is not to say we do not appreciate everybody else's that have come before you, but I'm looking at the time and I want to make sure that I leave today with a face and a story from you. So I'm just asking to change it up a little bit, because I'm a teacher by profession, and I want to get to know you. So with that being said, we're next going to invite Julie Baker, who's the Executive Director from the California for the Arts. And so what I'm looking for is, if you're walking down the street and somebody says, what do you do and what is your passion and what do you need, that you can tell us that in 3 to 5 minutes. Julie, I'm sorry. Welcome.
All right, well, thank you. Can you hear me? Here I am. I'm sitting in my home, but I want to say I love California arts, and I know you all do too.
I love the mask.
I will try to bring it home for you. I will try to bring it home for you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today and for the passion and commitment you've shown for advancing arts, culture, and creativity in California. My name is Julie Baker. I'm the Executive Director of California Arts Advocates and Californians for the Arts, the statewide arts and creative industry advocacy organizations. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm coming to you today from the land of the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe, who are currently fighting to have their federal recognition restored. Let me start by sharing a quote by one of my favorite authors, Toni Morrison, that I think exemplifies this moment for our sector. Quote, "This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal," end quote. There's never been a more important and relevant time for the arts and for artists to go to work to heal and provide empathy, hope, and joy for a nation divided and sick. If at any time during the pandemic you have looked to the work of artists to help find meaning or even a little distraction from the Groundhog Day nature of sheltering at home, then you understand the value of their contributions. Although we have looked to our artists for solace in close to a year of isolation, we have failed to support, recognize, and truly value them, particularly financially, for their contributions as our nation's second responders. We are here today to ask for your help in finally ending the historic undercapitalization of the arts, while also creating the opportunity for California to emerge as a leader in fostering thriving creative industries. Now is the time to proclaim arts are essential and to make an investment that can truly make a difference. With the expected $15 billion surplus, this one-time bonus of funds should in part be dedicated to restoring the creative workforce, businesses, and nonprofits that contribute so much to every community in California, an industry that represents over 750,000 jobs and $230 billion to California's economy. Access to arts will help us survive and overcome the pandemic, and as we emerge from this crisis, we will be a changed society. Investment in the arts need to be part of the long-term strategy to deal with the aftermath of the pandemic. Rebuilding California will require ingenuity, including a reckoning of systemic problems such as racism and economic disparity. The arts sector offers resourcefulness and innovation. By our very nature, we are creative problem solvers who will show up in service to rebuilding our communities. We have wonderful models across the state of integrating skilled creative workers into municipal government and statewide infrastructure programs, providing employment training and mentorships, developing thought-provoking and original works of art to build empathy and belonging, and innovative strategies to utilize venues and performers until we can gather safely again. It is time to bring this to scale for all of California. And once we are able to gather, the arts will reignite communities across the state, filling our restaurants, hotels, and theaters to capacity. But our arts and cultural institutions must not be allowed to perish if we seek to recover and revitalize our communities. We are a keystone in our state's economy, identity, and social fabric. Supporting the arts now is support for immediate social services in our most vulnerable communities. We cannot wait any longer to increase funding and staffing for the state arts agency, the California Arts Council, from whom you just heard. We need to fund the budget to at least $1 per capita per person. We are currently at 66 cents per person. By comparison, New York invests $2.31 and Minnesota over $7. If California is truly going to be the state of the arts, we must demonstrate commitment to its survival and sustainability. Today, you will hear stories of resiliency and innovation in the face of shutdowns and how art continues to bring people together to provide social cohesion and healing when we need it the most. However, what you will also hear is how this crisis has made an already financially fragile industry much worse. Every aspect of the industry has been hit. Some have better access to capital and reserves, some have access to private philanthropy, others have used public relief funds to keep going, but no one had it in their strategic or business plan how to survive if we cannot earn revenue for 12 to 18 months. That's simply not taught in business school. The funding we've received thus far for our sector from both the federal government and some state and local funds have kept us on life support, but will not be enough for us to return to work and reopen arts safely. Philanthropy has stepped up, but the access to capital, as you heard from Beacon Economics, is running dry. There's also currently no private philanthropy statewide for arts and culture. The only funding source for arts to be available in every community in California is the State Arts Agency. We call upon the private and public sector to invest in this workforce to rebuild back a better California for all. But let me just take a moment to describe who are arts and culture workers so you have an idea. And this comes from Americans for the Arts. The impact has been severe. 63% of creative workers were unemployed at the end of 2020. 15% of creative workers say they do not have access to clean water for drinking or washing. 1 in 10 creative workers have experienced homelessness, and 1 in 3 has been faced with the threat of eviction. Over 50% of creative workers have experienced food insecurity, and 40% are unable to get medical help. And 55% of creative workers have no savings to fall back on. Creative workers are suffering from a lack of the most basic human needs right now. In fact, they're some of the most vulnerable workforce among us. And artists who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color have higher rates of unemployment than white artists and lost a larger percentage of their 2020 income. In California, this picture is same, with 1/3 of the sector out of work, more than 450,000 jobs. As you heard, their arts workers are more than 3 times likely to be self-employed. Pandemic unemployment assistance has created a lifeline.
30
The toll the
seconds.
COVID pandemic could take on the sector.
Yeah,
Oh, I was given 10 minutes by the, I'm sorry, I was given 10 minutes.
We're going to cut some time just because we have so many on our list. And
I understand, but I really have something that I think is important I'd like to share then in terms of specifically, let me at least get to what we are asking of the legislature so that I can give you the very specifics. Maybe that will be helpful. We have no guidelines right now for live performances. We urge you to help us get those guidelines in collaboration with industry experts you will hear from today. We ask you to provide funding and resources to reopen arts safely in the form of loans or grants for audience and performer COVID testing and capital improvements to retrofit venues that may not have the ventilation systems, to develop innovative strategies to utilize venues for vaccine distribution, support the California Creative Corps pilot program and expand it to ongoing legislation, increase funding for vulnerable small businesses that have been forced to close, and increase the governor's allocation to cultural institutions to $50 million. And we also agree with the Legislative Analyst's Office of the California Grants Program that it needs to be more transparency to see who's actually getting those funds. Finally, we urge policymakers to continue dedicated state and federal support for California's creative industries. If and when a second relief package includes state funding, we ask for a dedicated funding stream to creative business organizations that are still closed, including the local arts agencies. But thank you, I appreciate your time, and I will have the full list of things submitted for your review. Thank you.
And thank you. We know that you, all of the panelists have prepared for time given, and we do want to acknowledge your work on that. All of your reports and graphs will be put up on our site for further reference. And so again, as the chair of this committee, we do want to be cognizant of what remarks are being made ahead of you. So if there are some similarities, if you could edit your remarks to some of the key points that possibly haven't already been said, and again become a narrative, so that I think as many of us here listen, we can say Lilia Gonzalez Chavez spoke about justice and spoke about justice in the arts, and I think that that tells the narrative, because the more we speak the same language and the more we can be out there with a plea to Californians that arts are not just about creative individuals, but they're really about artists who are supporting our economy. But that does finish our first panel. And do we have any of our members here that have any additional questions or comments? And also, I know that we have Assemblymember David Chu and Assemblymember Kalmager, Assemblymember Nazarian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to commend the last comments made by Ms. Baker. First of all, on her point about $1 per person per capita investment, I think that's a critical investment that has been sorely lacking. In fact, if you look at the funding for California Arts Commission, it had pretty much stalled for about 12 years, if I'm remembering it correctly, either 12 or 11 years, from about 2000 or 2001 till about 2012. In my first term of office, I introduced a bill to exactly do that and put in $75 million into the budget on an ongoing basis for the Arts Council on a $2 per capita basis. That ended up being negotiated down into I think a $5 million increase, and slowly it's been increasing since then. But we need to make this push again, especially during a time of crisis when it's critical that we see to what extent our state is dependent on the entertainment economy, or creative arts economy, I should say. And the second point she made about the guidelines, there's so many guidelines sorely missing because we've been going, as this pandemic has evolved and the virus has evolved and the surges have been recurring, we're trying to grapple and make things as we go along. And so from the fallout of that process, we see that there's things that have been sorely missing. And some of these things might not be as apparent in some parts of the state, but in places like myself or my district or several other colleagues' districts here, when you have an abundance of 99-seat theaters or places that capture a lot of these unspoken or smaller scale economy, but very much present conduct of these different sectors of the arts, it's critical that we make sure that we have regulations in place so that guidelines in place so that these industries can know how to go about getting resituated back in the economy. So thank you for making those critical points, and I'm happy to offer my support again on these fronts and work with you as well, along with other panelists and my colleagues here. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks. And again, to Julie Baker, Executive Director of California for the Arts, I too wrote down the word guidelines as I was listening to your comments, and also the underfunded when you made the remarks about our state and funding compared to other states. It is really disappointing that we lag far behind when we're actually known as an iconic state. But again, in my area, having two major theme parks, Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm, it isn't just the theme park attraction, but they in turn hire many, many hundreds of entertainers and performers in those theme parks. So we know that those loss of jobs are serious. With that, I'm going to go ahead and move to our next panel. And again, thank our first panel for a very quite a bit of information that really has set the stage for where we are, and to move into our next panel, which is impacts and activity in the field. So how is this really playing out in the field? Our first speaker we have is Kristen Sudoka, who is the director of the Los Angeles Department of Arts and Culture. Welcome, Kristen.
Good morning. Are you able to hear me and see
Yes.
me? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Good morning, Chair. As you noted, I'm Kristen Sakota, Director of the Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture, and I thank you and all of the members for inviting me to speak at this important hearing. So the Department of Arts and Culture serves as the local arts agency for Los Angeles County, the most populous and one of the most diverse counties in the nation, in the largest state in the nation. We have more than 10 million residents and a huge both geographic diversity as well as cultural and ethnic and racial diversity in our county. And as such, we often are sort of an example of what else is happening all across the state of California. For us as a local arts agency, our role is to develop comprehensive programs and policies in arts and culture and invest in LA County's cultural life. We do that through a number of core areas, for example, grants to hundreds of arts nonprofits and social service and social justice organizations that use the arts, professional development, creative career pathways, including a paid arts internship program, commissioning artists for civic art and civic spaces, robust arts education, which is so critical to all of our 81 different school districts and more than 1 million different students, as well as producing research in the arts, leading implementation of the LA County Cultural Equity and Inclusion Initiative, and using cross-sector strategies to advance the arts across different sectors. We're proud to say we are a state and local partner of the California Arts Council. So I want to not repeat what others have said, but just highlight that we find ourselves at this moment in time as a moment of crisis. The health pandemic is, of course, a health crisis of epic proportions, has led us to a resulting economic crisis, and we've seen during this time a crisis of reckoning with racial inequity. As others have noted, these have caused combined an intense and very significant impact on our field, shutting down from the very beginning the arts and cultural sector, but also decimating many of our communities and really revealing structural issues that were there before, such as the undercapitalization of the field, such as disproportionate impacts in inequity along income and racial lines in public health, well-being, and others. But I'm going to add a fourth crisis for us to think about, and that is a crisis happening nationwide, a crisis of confidence in public institutions. And now, while all of these have led us to a moment of crisis and reckoning and response, it's also a moment of opportunity for us to respond, for us to recover, and for us to reimagine what our relationship with the arts and creative sector looks like, and reimagine the resiliency of the arts and creative sector. So just briefly, at the department, part of what we did is our response included convening in the arts sector. We have other local arts agencies, arts service organizations, grantees. We pivoted our programs to virtual. We accelerated grant payments to get that critical funding, public funding out the door. We're liaising with the County Department of Public Health to help support and inform their efforts and help them understand the arts and creative economy, as well as share their information and those important protocols and guides out to the field, created digital resource centers, and participated on LA County's Economic Resiliency Task Force. Some of the recommendations that came through that task force are already beginning to come forward, like the adoption of a model countywide cultural policy that centers the notion of cultural equity for all, and the idea of the arts as being a solution across sectors like education, justice reform, the built environment, and anti-racism and belonging. Now, we also were fortunate enough to have CARES Act dollars, and so we had an LA County COVID Relief Fund with $12 million that were given out to the field. And I want to tell you a couple of things about how that response went. We were able to partner and get those funds out. And I just want to share with you, we were able to support more than 300 organizations that were affected by COVID with the $12 million. To address equity, 95% of the dollars we gave out went to small and mid-sized organizations with a budget of 15 million and under, knowing those are most rooted often in our low-income communities or our communities of color and have less access to funding. But what we saw is that of those organizations applying, majority of them, a high majority, more than 80%, said they were going to use those dollars for payroll, so to keep jobs. We also saw that collectively across the more than 300 organizations applying, the losses and unanticipated expenses that they claimed totaled not 12 million, $230 million was the impact that they were claiming. And this was at the end of 2020. So again, we're moving forward with even longer time losses. So it really showed us the need. We're deeply grateful in the County Board of Supervisors for recognizing the arts sector and including that in small business relief, but the need is still great and continuing. We've seen so many who've had to lay off staff and other examples, or have shut down, or trying to pivot to virtual, help our communities without being paid or without support. So we see this moment as a time not to turn away from the arts, but to double down on the arts as a vital and creative sector that's important to our shared prosperity and our collective recovery. As you've so noted, in our economy, but also the arts contribute to well-being of communities, and studies have proven this, as well as educating our youth.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm sorry, did you say something?
Yeah, we have about 20 seconds left here.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So I will just end by saying through our work, we hope to demonstrate the importance of the public sector and the important role of the public sector, but also know that public-private partnership and private sector is critical as well. And again, noting that the arts are vital across sectors, from career pathways to justice reform, education, well-being. And so the arts are a vital part of relief, but also recovery and supporting reopening of all of our communities. DEI cannot be overstated, so all of that with an equity lens is critical, and thinking about the arts as part of not only a wonderful sector, but our shared prosperity. We look forward to continuing to working with the state. We're excited to be a partner and to really get to work with all of the incredible artists, organizations, advocacy groups, and public and private sector entities. I thank you so much for having me, and happy to share any information offline that I spoke about today.
Thank you so much, Kristen Sakota. We appreciate those. And again, as we continue, we still have many, many presenters. I have not counted them all, but we have many presenters. And again, I want to assure you that the legislators that are here listening and participating, we are champions for the arts. We want to see every additional dime possible put into this budget. We want to see recovery. So what we'd like to hear from you are some solutions that you may have thought about that may not have already been said, some kind of narrative, again, story that may have not been said, and also you might have to cut a few of your slides and some of your presentation. We're not at all trying to your testimony is very important. We're just wanting to take in and give the story to California in snippets here. So as much as you can to kind of edit some of your presentation would be very helpful. All right, with that, we are going to go now to Marie Acosta, and she's the Executive and Artistic Director for the Latino Center for Arts and Culture.
Good morning, committee members. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to cut to the chase here. I hope I can show you our PowerPoint presentation, but be very brief. As you said, I am the director of the Latino Center of Art and Culture located in Sacramento. But I'm currently the volunteer director because I am unemployed. And I'm an elder. I'm an older woman, as you can maybe tell, and I'm at the end of my career, and I find myself unemployed and trying to run one of the oldest and most important cultural institutions in the state of California. But let me see if I can show you our slides, because mine is one face of millions of faces out here who are unemployed and work in the arts. Is the share up? There. Okay, I'm going to go straight to our second slide. These are some of the people that we employ. We're one of the largest nonprofit employers of artists in Sacramento. And you know the Latino community has been hard hit, but see, these are some of the faces. Oh, well, you can't see them with the mask. But these are some of the people we employ: traditional artists, community members, emerging artists, folk and traditional artists. These are all people we pay. And from one day to the next, they lost their money. They lost their income. They had no 2-week notice. They were just told, as we had to tell them, no money this year. And our vendors, these people come to our events, mostly outdoors. They sell their wares. These are individual artists or small independent businesses, food vendors, and they make a lot of money at our events because they sell most of what they make. Restaurants. These are restaurants in Sacramento that are closed, but this is one that is right near where we do Day of the Dead, and they rely on our income when we get there. Okay, here's a slide that should wake everybody up. Porta potties. Yes, we pay for porta potties at every one of our outdoor events. Our porta potty provider is a small business owned by a person of color, and they rely on us for income. So this is one of the far reaches that that the arts has in the state of California.
And Marie,
Yes.
this is something I appreciate, because I don't think anybody would associate porta potties with the arts. So you're talking about a vendor that we would not be on our radar. So I appreciate that. And that's the kind of things that we want to hear, is something that we might not have already heard. So thank you. And if you want to continue, if you have any solutions that you've really been thinking about.
Yes, I'm getting to that right now, Madam Chair. Thank you. It's a picture of our families. This is our solution that we want to pose to you. We were funded by Sacramento to do the Sacramento Artist Corps. The Artist Corps put 40 artists to work. And these are artists who lost all of their income. This is some of the press we got. This is a coloring book that I'd like to show you that was distributed to food banks and to food distribution centers that was created for families.
Maria, somehow your slides aren't showing up. Maybe that's a little bit of, yeah, they're not.
The coloring book is up. It can't be seen?
Yeah. No, we're not seeing the slides. So if you just want to tell us, just tell us without the
Yes,
slides.
the coloring book, I'll give this to you, is an example of one of the ways that artists were put to work to serve our community during the pandemic. And that's what we're asking. Put us to work. Put us to work, fund us, get us back into the workforce by starting a project statewide that I understand the governor has proposed, the California Creative Corps. Put us to work and you'll see results. Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize about the slides for whatever reason they didn't pop up. We'll make sure they're in our our presentation. Thank you, Maria, and we do appreciate those. I hear you clearly. Get us the resources so we can get back to work. Thank you so much. All right, next we're going to go to Keisha Dumas, Heath, who is the director of the Museum of African American Art. And again, Keisha, if you can just give us a few examples. We know that about 3/4 of your presentations have to be cut because of time, but we want to hear just your plea.
Good morning.
Keisha?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I apologize. We're having some, there she is.
Good morning.
Hi, Keisha.
Thank you. Thank you to the Assembly Committee and to the Chair, Assemblymember Quirk-Silva, for your efforts to listen to all voices at today's informational hearing on restarting the arts. As I submit this formal testimony, I hope the committee will forgive the time, because you're inspired by the arts and we all listen more closely when words rhyme. To Assemblymember Kamlager, who has been listening from the start, greetings from the 54th District and the Museum of African American Art. Our members are dying, many from COVID-19, others from good old age, still more from isolation, unemployment, and rage. We've shown our longevity, and now there's a necessity for our museum to seek funding in ways we might not have before so that we won't be ignored. All the arts are equally essential, and budget size is not a credential. We want to be eligible, even if our budget seems negligible. In grant-making circles, there seems to be some fear that if your organization is small, you might disappear. Let us counter that notion. We are still here. The Museum of African American Art is in its 45th year. We received a small CARES recovery grant, and we will continue to apply for all funding opportunities for which we qualify. Our revenues since the shutdown have decreased by 68% for rentals, gift shop sales, and memberships, which all relied on in-person events. When we host events, we offer food. Some people come for the turkey wraps or send their kids into the museum for a much-needed snack because we don't turn our backs. Anyone can visit for free and no one will ask for their ticket or their sticker or for their pass. No one will turn them away or ask them to leave. We say, thank you for coming. Enjoy the art, please. When the event is ending, we ask, why don't you wait just a few more minutes and take home a plate? Now we're planning virtual events and launching new communications, seeking funding not for projects, but for reopening and operations. We've been shuttered, and the guidelines for reopening have seemed cluttered. We are inside a retail space that is open. People don't understand why we're closed. Does one guideline fit all museums? That's one of the questions we pose. When it's all done and spoken, we would like to reopen, even for limited activities. We can be part of the remedy. We are an art museum inside a retail place, compelled to redefine how we use our space. Our large event hall is one of our few surpluses, and we could reopen for public health purposes. Metro, Center Theater Group, and the commissioners of the Los Angeles Police have all come to our museum for community outreach. We're ready to activate that same outreach machine to help the museum's neighbors get that vaccine. We don't have an endowment. What we have is empowerment from a community that trusts us to educate creatively, from health to social justice. We are an important part of an arts ecosystem that is not yet an equal system. It still discriminates on the basis of size. We ask you to revise your understanding of what it means to be an anchor institution. Museums of all sizes can be part of the solution. Even on the smallest budget, we will leave you with our 2 cents. The arts are feeding your constituents. Thank you for your time. California has been called the state of the arts, and we encourage you to legislate accordingly. Thank you.
Wow, that was awesome. That was incredible. Thank you. And I think you summed up. And again, it goes back, if the governor's team is watching and listening, it goes back to guidelines, guidelines, guidelines. I noted the space that you were talking about, that you are in a retail space, and you're also looking to do things related to vaccines, and I think it's very compelling. Thank you. We will, if you would not mind allowing us to have that script, or if you want to say poem, very brilliantly written, we will make sure that we get that to Dr. Magali and to our governor's team. Thank you so much. With that, we appreciate that, and that was a testimony of the arts there. Thank you, Keisha. Next, we have Brittany Britton, who is the gallery director of, let me say, the Native American Art Galleries, and we welcome Brittany Britton.
Hey, I'm Cynthia. Hello, and thank you for having me here today. I'm Brittany Britton, the gallery director to the Reese Fullerton and the Gudini Native American Arts Galleries, located at the Humboldt State University campus here in Arcata, California, in ancestral Wiyot territory. I'm also a Hoopa tribal member, and I'm pleased to be able to report to you all on the state of the galleries, our other local arts organizations here in our rural and our tribal communities. I'm going to shorten what I had prepared previously, but my focuses here are the struggles of our rural communities here up north and in other parts of our state that are internet access, COVID guideline struggles, and funding, as others have previously said. I'm in a unique position as being a director of 2 art galleries housed on a CSU campus. The Reese Fullerton is our academic gallery, and Gudini is our Native American Arts Gallery. It's the only Native focused gallery in the CSU system, and probably one of the few Native focused galleries within California. I came into the job in June of last year. I'm staff of 1, trying to shift our exhibitions, as everybody is, into digital and maybe outdoor spaces where they could be seen. Due to our rural locale, we have experienced a double-edged sword with COVID. We have access to wider open spaces to be able to distance in areas that do not have access to technology that help connect us. We have had lower case rates in general in Humboldt compared to the rest of the state, and an ease of finding areas to be able to recreate and create without having to gather with others. But we also have limited internet access in our rural and especially our tribal communities, like we saw with Ann Crawford reporting from Arcata, and I might be having similar issues here out on the coast. Where I'm from in Hoopa, the only access for internet is either satellite or the use of my cell phone as a hotspot. And this is not an uncommon experience here up north. Added issues within that are that elders are less likely to have access to technology and more likely to need to be connected to others. How do we get arts programs and programming to all parts of our state? When I came onto my job, we had canceled all of our spring programming and pivoted to online programming. I made the decision to physically install our exhibitions by myself into our galleries and using 360 photographing to capture the exhibitions in place to show to digital visitors along with digital tours. But that pivoting was easy for me as I'm backed by a CSU, even though we are experiencing funding crisis. The purchase of a very expensive 360 camera is not something all of our rural arts are able to do. Some organizations like the Ink People Center for the Arts have shifted their monthly community exhibitions over the summer and fall to an online space in a way that helped sell artists' artwork, and they have had lots of success with it. I bought a painting from there. For my part, I've had to keep the Reespollen and the Gudini closed to the public due to being on a CSU campus, while other galleries and museums in the county have had brief periods of being able to open to the public. Here's where we've experienced limitations within COVID guidelines. Museum and galleries are being considered a part of indoor entertainment. The Clark Historical Museum, which focuses on Humboldt history with a fantastic Northwest Native American basket collection, where I used to work up until June of last year, was made to close while in the purple tier, while retail spaces and malls are allowed to be open, let alone restaurants. Museums are asked to only open their outdoor spaces, which a lot of our rural historical museums are indoor-only spaces due to the nature of their collections and their architecture. Our small rural museum and art galleries aren't being taken into consideration with these guidelines. I would arguably feel safer going into one of our history or art galleries with an appointment versus shopping at a mall at in the same risk tier. This has created a struggle to give artists spaces to showcase their artwork and having to work creatively within strict constraints. What I'm hearing from our other local arts orgs, along with what I'm seeing myself looking into this next year, is that there's limited access to funding, like other peers have said. There's a lot of funding made for Northern California, but larger, more populated areas receive the funding more easily than us further north. Funding that comes into our rural communities stays in our rural communities because our arts organizations work together and employ artists first. We need to make the arts accessible and getting money into the hands of artists. I have to bring my artwork into the community. We have to be creative within our problem solving. There's a strength here in our rural community, being able to make do with what we have and still be able to keep things going. The arts are integral to our communities, our cultures, our ways of envisioning new ways of being and of healing. And Satdia, thank you for giving me this time. Satdia.
Thank you, Brittany. And again, I'm hearing because of where your galleries are located on campuses, that's been a barrier. That you pivoted by using some 3D printers, which I know those are very costly, but ultimately we need to get the artists and their wares to the public, and that goes back to guidelines, right? So we are going to be the broken record on guidelines, if nothing else. Thank you so much. We will now move to Joanne Desmond, the Assistant Business Agent now for the International Alliance of Theatrical State Employees, Local 16. So those people who are working on the front lines.
Good morning. I hope everyone can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you and see you. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Dear Chair Quirk-Silva and committee members, my name is Joanne Desmond, and I represent IATSC Local 16 stagehands in the San Francisco Bay Area. We are also members of the California IATSC Council. We are deeply grateful for the opportunity to appear before you today and your recognition of the importance of our situation. When COVID-19 hit almost a year ago, stagehands throughout California saw their work disappear literally overnight. Carpenters, riggers, painters, audiovisual technicians, electricians, wardrobe, hair and makeup have been left devastated due to this crisis. Currently, our workforce is at 95% unemployment. To say the situation is catastrophic is an understatement. Losing their employment is just the tip of the iceberg for so many. A significant number of our members have also lost their health care coverage due to lack of contributions. Many have been forced to move out of state to support their families, and more deeply concerned about how they will be able to pay back rent. All this is happening while they are forced to decide if they still have a future in a career they love and have dedicated their lives to. In addition, California EDD has proved to be challenging and frustrating to far too many who have been trying to access their benefits. For them, unemployment insurance is currently their only source of income. Lastly, and not surprisingly, the effect this has taken on our members' mental health cannot be overlooked. Sadly, we have proof of that reality since we have encountered several suicides due to the pandemic and the disastrous situation it has created. IATSE Local 16 has worked tirelessly to assist our members during this time. We are helping them navigate EDD, we write rent relief letters to landlords, we contribute to and staff food bank drives. Yet due to the fact we are a union 501c5, we have remained ineligible for crucial funds from the Payment Protection Program. The efforts to include unions in the last stimulus bill were blocked. Local 16 is a labor union committed to assisting not just our members, but all working people who have been devastated by COVID-19. However, we need preliminary guidelines for the criteria we will need for live entertainment to reopen. While the federal stimulus programs have been helpful, they are far from enough. We need economic support for organizations in the art and entertainment to get people back to work. We need to create non-refundable tax credits for businesses to cover the cost of COVID-19 workplace safety compliance. We need unions to be included in the PPP program. We need to preserve access to health care via a 100% federal COBRA subsidy for workers. We are working hard to ensure that these and other provisions are in the next stimulus bill. The support of this committee for our efforts would be invaluable and would help us at the federal level. Looking to the future, the performing arts, music, and live entertainment are essential to the economic as well as cultural well-being of communities throughout the state. It goes without saying that the sooner we can get this sector back to work, the sooner our state can begin a strong economic recovery. While facing all this, IAT Local 16 and our members are ready to be part of the solution. Stagehands are one of the most versatile labor forces in the country. The California IATSE Council has reached out to Governor Newsom to offer our assistance in the setting up of large-scale vaccination sites at various venues throughout California. We are ready, able, and willing to help. We welcome your support and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Joanne, and we do appreciate your comments. Again, your initial comments noted so many jobs that not always are we associating with the arts industry, whether it's carpenters or painters or builders of sets. And we know that they, like you said, 95% unemployment, losing health care. These are serious consequences, and we do urge those out there listening to continue to apply for the PPE programs that are available, to ask for assistance through EDD. We know that has been an extremely difficult process, and many of us as legislators are very concerned, but we can help navigate where possible. But we will continue to send the message that we need to reopen with guidelines as soon as possible. Thank you so much. That does end that second panel. We next have our third panel, which is Restart the Arts, Reopening Safely. Before we begin, I know that our caucus does have a call at noon, so we will be losing some of our members, so I apologize to some of the speakers if you've seen my urgency and brevity. It is not because I don't value your comments. I just want our members to get as much of your comments as possible. But we will continue after noon, even if some of our members have to leave. So do we have any of our members that are here that have any comments that they want to make? All right, we will move to the third panel, and we have 8 presenters on here. And this is titled Restart the Arts, Reopening Safely, which has been our goal from day one. And we are going to start with Martha Demson, who is the president of the Theatrical Producers League of Los Angeles. Martha.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you so much for including me in this morning's hearing and for your commitment to the arts. Yes, my name is Martha Demson. I am the board president of the Theatrical Producers League of Los Angeles, which is a trade association of small and mid-sized nonprofit theaters. We're young, just under 10 years old, but together our member organizations fuel the engine that drives the dreams of emerging and BIPOC artists who need a place where their voices can be heard, where their work can be championed, where they can make connections and advance careers without encountering the paywall of casting director workshops or expensive showcases. Shortly after the pandemic began, I became deeply concerned with this question of how we, the performing arts community, would come back from COVID. How would we keep artists and patrons safe? How would we convince them that we could do so? How could we make everyone feel comfortable that we were doing so? I decided that TIPLA should reach out to our theatrical labor union partners to formulate a plan. They each had retained notable epidemiologists, and I thought if I could convince representatives from each labor union to join me in a room, together we could assemble comprehensive guidelines addressing the safety needs and concerns of all the artists who collaborate in the creation of live performance and whose work puts them especially at risk. It took a little persuasion, but finally our Joint Labor Management COVID Safety Task Force was assembled. And as far as I know, our task force is the only one of its kind in the country for our industry, where representatives of each union have sat down with each other and with producers to work on a comprehensive set of safety recommendations. Even though TIPLA's companies are small, I believe we are uniquely well positioned to respond to the COVID crisis. I don't think many at this time would feel comfortable attending a packed concert or a huge touring production. But what if people were able to go to a botanical garden or a zoo or a museum sculpture garden that was already approved to reopen? And what if when they got there, there was a string quartet playing or a series of dance soloists performing or maybe a magician dazzling everyone with sleight of hand? Small performances for small numbers of people was the way to start, I thought. This would be a way for people to learn how to gather safely, all spread out, wearing masks outside. And this would be a way for producers and artists to learn together how to produce and perform safely in a pandemic. The big production houses might not be interested right away, but the vast network of small arts organizations across the state wouldn't hesitate. And wouldn't that start to heal our communities? In a telebriefing with Dr. Ferrer and Jean Armbruster of the LA Department of Public Health, I mentioned that I was working with representatives from the theatrical labor unions to develop a strategy for an incremental return to live performance. They were intrigued. They had just recently received the white paper from the film, television, and music industries. That was also a joint effort of management and labor, by the way, and it has been successful not only in providing a roadmap to reopen the sector, but also in keeping large numbers of working artists healthy. The LA Department of Public Health encouraged us to put something similar together for the performing arts, and our task force decided to take this challenge on. This afternoon, we will be sharing with this committee and with the administration the executive summary of our principles and recommendations for an incremental return to live performance. We have recommendations for safety protocols to support live performance at every tier level, starting with work outdoors at drive-ins and in partner venues, then adding work indoors to film or stream live performances with no audience present, until we ultimately arrive at work in larger and more traditional performance spaces, both indoors and outdoors, always maintaining robust physical distancing, both on stage and in the house, thoughtfully limiting total occupancy, requiring frequent PCR testing for our performers and production staff, encouraging mask wearing, sanitation and disinfection, paying a special attention to ventilation in all indoor spaces, and insisting that personal responsibility be taken for hygiene and off-site behavior by everyone on the production team. Our entire set of recommendations runs to about 70 pages, but the executive summary provides a much shorter and reasonably comprehensive overview, and I really hope you will read it. Performing arts producers know how to manage audiences, and we in the theater have a long history of dealing with complicated safety protocols. Returning artists and patrons to live performance in a manner that feels reassuringly safe and that brings everyone joy and strengthens resilience, we can do that. We need your help now in encouraging this administration to issue more detailed guidelines for a safe reopening of the performing arts. Ideally, the administration will elect to work with our joint labor management task force. We've invested months of time and collective effort into detailing what we believe is needed. And in addition, I encourage this council to look for additional funding for our small and mid-sized organizations, because any return to live performance safely is going to bring significant additional costs that our organizations cannot absorb, especially with the cost of compliance with AB 5 and the impact of being closed for going on 11 months. We need significant financial relief. Otherwise, I'm afraid that many of our vibrant small organizations are at risk of never coming back, and that will deal a terrible blow to the California economy and to all of our our all-important entertainment pipeline that we may never recover from. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Joanne, and I really appreciate that roadmap to opening small, small, small. I like that. I think, again, opening small, opening quickly with all the protocols you suggest, and I'm hoping that others on our call will steal each other's information, as if you spent the time working on it, we don't have to reinvent, because you did a very comprehensive roadmap right here that I just heard. Thank you. We're going to go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Martha. I was calling you Joanne. Sorry, Martha. I apologize. Thank you for that excellent presentation. Next, we have John Forsythe, who I've had the opportunity to meet more than a few times as he works tirelessly in Orange County. But he is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Pacific Symphony of Orange County. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much. We were founded in Fullerton, so I take that as a compliment. Good morning, and thank you so much for offering this hearing today, and congratulations to all the speakers who spoke beautifully and compellingly, and I'll try to build on Joanne's comments. She did a terrific job. So specifically, I run an orchestra that's about 40 years old, and I've been with it 22 years. And our music director has been with our orchestra 31 years. And he, as a distinguished American leader, has often said, music is a birthright that must be shared equally by all. His philosophy is embedded in our DNA. And you'd be surprised to know that 40% of all the individuals who hear the Pacific Symphony do so for free. Just before the pandemic, we received a beautiful, touching letter from court-appointed special advocates describing the reaction of one of the children who attended a concert. The letter said, "My Casa kid was just in complete and utter awe. She kept saying all night long how much fun she was having. Her young eyes could not absorb enough. I don't know if she even blinked." During the pandemic, I'm proud to report that we continue to pay our musicians, and they are flexibly providing digital services to all our partners and audiences. It is, however, exceptionally difficult to sustain this effort. On behalf of the 130 orchestras and thousands of musicians, staff, and board members of the Association of California Symphony Network, I urge you to establish guidelines for the safe return of the public to our performances. We are behind other states in creating clear, relevant guidelines that we can provide to those, so that we can provide impact to those that we care about, like our musicians, audiences, students, and teachers.
John, can I John, can
Sure.
can you just tell me exactly what you told me before, which is by tomorrow or in a month of what you need by guidelines so that you can be prepared to at least offer a fall season, if you want to say it that way. What has to happen now?
Sure. Well, let me just comment on a German study that came out, which is critical for you all to understand. German scientists demonstrated that concert halls can operate at 50% capacity with almost no risk of infection from COVID-19. The study shows that a checkerboard pattern of seating in the auditorium would be enough to ensure audience safety. This and other studies show that we can safely reopen to audiences now. So while we read that movie theaters are being allowed to open at certain tiers, a concert hall should not be bound by the same regulatory framework as a movie theater, given the cubic volume of air and sophistication of air handling, among other attributes. With an elite scientific team in Germany making this report, do we have to replicate the same study in our concert halls? Can we move forward? So our roadmap is based on a tiered structure we employ in California. For the purple tier, we recommend outdoor performances aligned with those for religious services. So performance activities would be limited to 100 patrons in attendance. Ensembles would maintain social distancing, but full orchestras could perform if the large stage accommodates the agreed upon recording industry or labor management safety agreements. Indoors, no more than 50 would be allowed to attend. For the red tier, outdoor performances would increase to 250 people, no more than 100 permitted indoors. However, it is in the orange tier that we propose utilizing the checkerboard seating plan for indoor and outdoor venues. And it is with the yellow tier, and this is where I think we really need your assistance, we would ask you to consider allowing full reopening of our outdoor concert hall and indoor concert venues with masking, spacing in public areas, cleaning, and other CDC safety protocols. Please bear in mind it is difficult to make immediate changes given the long lead times we require, so it provides some buffer of time to the implementation to observe trends. Given the variability of physical size of performance and seating areas, both outdoors and indoors, the sophistication of air handling and other variables, we would ask that our local health officials be empowered to review a safety plan with no less than 7 days notice that might allow for an organization to exceed the capacity threshold, particularly in the early stages. We also ask for clear guidance on the point at which full seating capacity with masks or without is permissible, recognizing our very long planning lead times. And 3 final points, I would just say that during the pandemic, orchestras have successfully been making the case for philanthropic support. But the crippling loss of ticket sales from not being able to hold in-person performances mean we need a financial infusion from the state to get back on our feet, particularly after federal programs wane. It will take time to regain audiences and restore revenue. And second, as earlier stated, our musicians are teaching artists. Working as teaching artists in public and private schools, we want to ensure that they have a categorization alongside teachers in receiving the vaccine. And lastly, I would just say, in relation to the Arts Council funding, I want to re-emphasize we are 1/10 the funding level of the state of Minnesota. It is time to really make California a leader, not a lagger. We need to get ahead, and we need to be the state that leads the way in the reopening of the arts and culture.
Okay, there is a quote that we can use. We want to be a leader, not a lagger, in not only our arts funding, but in starting to open up these venues, as we know we are a lagger right now. That being said, guidelines again in order to get some of this reopening. So I appreciate the work you do, John, and we are hopefully going to be able to continue to be the broken record to the governor's office. Thank you for joining us.
Madam Chair, this is Assemblymember Cam Walker. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm also going to have to step out for this caucus, but I just wanted to share some things that I've been, as talking about guidelines that I've been taking notes on. And what I've also heard is, you know, a maybe stronger discussion with EDD on how to make sure that we have specialized care for folks who are in the creative economy. We know that they have very challenging times just getting unemployment insurance out regularly, but even in the past, they have struggled with making sure that artists were able to get their claims because they're considered seasonal workers. So I'd like to add that to what we're putting in the record. Digital broadband came up from our sister in Humboldt County, and we know that a lot of small nonprofit organizations are challenged with that access. So as we're fighting for digital broadband access for all, we should make sure that we're incorporating the arts into that. And just a true arts recovery infusion of dollars. You know, when we're talking about rent relief, when we're talking about childcare, when we're talking about healthcare, you know, many of our artists are working 2, 3, 4 jobs. And so how we sort of formalize something that's targeted, you know, is also something that I've heard. And then, you know, lastly, there was also a study that came out that said even 20% capacity would work for many arts institutions and even other small businesses. So I just want to make sure that I'm putting that in the record of ways that we can work aggressively to support our arts community.
Thank you, Assemblymember Colmogger, and I agree, those notes will be added and all extremely important. And again, this is why we do these informational hearings. We hear some information regularly, but then there's new information, and that's some of the things that have just been said by our panelists that may not have been on the top of our list. So thank you so much. And thank you. We are going to go ahead and move now to Dan Beckerman, President and Chief Executive Officer of AEG Worldwide. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today on behalf of not only AEG, but on the sports and entertainment industry in California. This is such an important topic for us, and all of the areas being discussed today, we see them as part of the same ecosystem: the arts, music, entertainment, and tourism. To provide a little context, AEG, we're a worldwide sports and entertainment company. We're headquartered in Los Angeles. And while we have hundreds of properties all over the world, in the state of California, we own and operate 2 stadiums, 6 sports teams, including the LA Kings, 7 convention centers, including Moscone and the LA Convention Center, 8 arenas, including Staples Center, 10 music festivals, including the Coachella Festival, and 15 clubs and theaters up and down the coast. So we're a major stakeholder in California. You've heard several times today already, live entertainment was the first industry to be shut down and will be the last to return. And over the course of our shutdown, we'll lose billions of dollars in California revenues that would have generated hundreds of millions of dollars in income, sales, business, and other taxes for the city, the county, and the state. In addition to the financial impact, though, the one that weighs heavy on us is the impact that this has had on our employees. We have thousands of full-time employees in California that have been severely impacted with furloughs and layoffs, and tens of thousands of part-time event employees whose shifts have just disappeared as these events have been canceled. These are our security officers, our ushers, our custodial staff, our concession workers, and many of them rely on those shifts as their primary source of income. Others just need those shifts to make ends meet. But either way, these are longstanding employees. I want to make the point, I think I'm the only one speaking today on behalf of the sports business, so I'd like to just highlight one point on sports tourism. And the sports-related travel industry, it's a massive industry, $45 billion of annual spending, 750,000 jobs, $15 billion in tax revenue nationally. And this sector has just been devastated as events in California are canceled or relocated or conducted without fans. You're going to hear from our friends and our partners at Live Nation in a second. And what I want to highlight is that it's not just large companies like Live Nation and AEG that are having our revenues and our employees impacted by the pandemic. There are countless small businesses that are impacted by this crisis as well. It could be the family-owned restaurant across the street from Staples Center that needs our foot traffic, or one of the many small businesses that are vendors or suppliers to our restaurants and our festivals and our venues. It could be the woman-owned custom signage company or the minority-owned party decor company that we work with at LA Live. But this crisis has really taken its toll on family, minority, and women-owned businesses that rely on sports, entertainment, and tourism. I know there's been a lot of talk about guidelines, so I want to talk about that for a quick second. We've been working with the government and with the governor's office and his task force over the last 10 months, and we've been able to make some progress, and we've developed the guidelines and procedures for how we can safely live with the COVID-19 virus and operate parts of our businesses in a limited way. We have fanless guidelines, we have partial capacity guidelines, and we prioritize the safety of our employees, our athletes, our artists, and our fans as our #1 priority. And we've been able to do that, and we've created a safe environment, and we've hosted fanless events over the last 8 months. But it is not enough. The last speaker put it very, very well. It is not enough to restore our industry and bring back our employees. I'll wrap it up here in a second, but I want to show some optimism because thankfully circumstances are changing. Vaccines are going into arms for our most vulnerable population. We're seeing the case counts finally come down and the death rates declining, which is encouraging. Now, we have this unique lens that we operate venues all over the world, so we can see that with proper social distancing and mandatory mask wearing and regular testing of our staff, we can safely host events with partial capacities. And we see it in China, we see it in our venues in Australia and New Zealand, and we can see a path to returning our business. And the transition has started here in the United States as well. But as an industry, our primary focus needs to be evolving the guidelines we have today to reflect the fact that vaccinations are going into arms. And we want to continue to work with the state and local officials and our health departments to take those guidelines, enhance them, and adapt them from what we have today, which is really focused on how we live with the virus, to a system that will help us emerge from the pandemic and begin to live without it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think this really does help put into perspective from a very large entertainment organization like yours, but to the smaller ones, of how we can take the scenario we're in right now, as you mentioned, with vaccines, case counts going down, and even deaths, and start to really look at what is our next 6-month plan. We will then now move to Joe Berchtold, who is the president of Live Nation. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today. My name is Joe Berchtold. I'm the president of Live Nation Entertainment. We're one of the global leaders in live entertainment. We operate in 40 countries with over 30,000 workers across the U.S. and more than 50,000 around the world. In 2019, we promoted 40,000 concerts and 100 festivals for 100 million fans globally. We are based here in California. We have our headquarters in Los Angeles. We employ over 6,500 workers in California during the summer concert season. And in 2019, we had approximately 4,000 shows and 7 million fans attend at over 30 venues in the state. As Dan just spoke to, many of the reopening plans thus far have been focused around social distancing, limited capacity, and other necessary safeguards in mind before the vaccines were available. Unfortunately, this has left us severely constrained. Live Nation over the past year has lost more than 95% of its revenue, but more broadly, 77% of live industry workers have lost 100% of their income. And the thousands of workers that have been impacted by the furloughs and layoffs have had tremendous damage, as many of the speakers have spoken to. And as a result, the state has lost millions in tax revenue and much more in overall economic impact. But now, as we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine rollout, we do think it's very important to turn the focus to understand what happens when the vaccine is readily available. If the good news continues with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, projections currently indicate there should be enough vaccine for everybody in the country by June. And at that point, what are our plans? Now, first, we understand the priority needs to be on the distribution of all available supply to make sure everybody possible is vaccinated. And to support this effort, Live Nations joined with AEG, NEVA, IATSE, and others represented in this hearing to offer our facilities and resources to the vaccination effort. We've close to a dozen venues and active discussions around acting as vaccine sites, and we're prepared to help any efforts here in California that we can. Then as we continue to get further clarity on vaccine timing, it's important to establish now the guidelines for reopening when those vaccines are available to all. We need those guidelines now because of the lead time for promoters and artists to plan the tours, sell the tickets, rehearse the show, and then perform. Everyone needs the confidence that the show is going to be able to happen if the guidelines are met in order to get started. As part of this, we need clarity on how these guidelines will vary for outdoor venues, which have demonstrated much greater lower risk of transmission. It remains our ambition to return to promoting concerts at scale this summer, but accomplishing this requires guidelines that we, the artists and fans alike, can depend on. We stand ready to do our part in the reopening, providing enhanced cleaning and sanitation, contactless entry, contactless payment, staggered crowd flow, and a range of other operational precautions as need be. And the well-being of fans, artists, and staff will always be our top priority. But we also know that the economic impact of the out-of-work employees and others has been devastating. And with the vaccine process underway, it's critical to now turn our attention to their future well-being, their future financial well-being as well. I'm thankful for the opportunity to share our perspective with the committee and look forward to continuing the conversation so we may see a return to live music as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Berchtold, the president of Live Nation, and between Dan Beckerman and Joe Berchtold, we are talking about thousands and thousands of jobs and billions of dollars that has impacted the state of California. So this is a serious, serious discussion, and there is no disagreement of reopening safely. But many of these institutions, that is their job, to move people, move them safely through. And the last thing they want is some type of super spreader event. With that, I know we have Assemblymember Nazarian that'd like to make a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, since we're going to have to take off in a couple of minutes, just wanted to reemphasize something. I'm glad that everyone has touched on the importance of the guidelines. I guess I just want to emphasize to all the panelists as well as to ourselves here that it's critical that we look at the guidelines for all levels of the arts and make sure that everyone from the AEGs of the world and Live Nations of the world down to the 99 individual theaters are all within the guideline categories, because, you know, whereas the economic engines and the boosts of today are the Live Nations and the AEGs of the world, the human laboratories of the 99-seat theaters are the ones that are going to be producing the talent for tomorrow. So we got to make sure that we're addressing the needs at every level of the arts. I just wanted to reemphasize that point because I had missed that initially.
Yes, from the smallest to our largest, whether they're theaters or touring companies, we need to address all, because since I have had the opportunity to be the chair of this committee, what I have heard firsthand, it's the uncertainty of not knowing. And again, we're all working through this pandemic, and none of us have been through a pandemic. So this is not to put a blame game, but it's certainly to say we don't want to see other states taking our actors and theaters and our movie companies. We want to keep business here, but we have to be able to give the very basic information to these institutions, and that is the most updated guidelines and a roadmap to recovery. I do see that our Vice Chair, Suzette Martinez Valderas would like to speak.
Yes, first of all, I just want to thank all of the panelists and participants today for sharing your stories, and you're on the ground, and without your input and insight as to how you have been individually impacted, it would make our job a lot harder. We rely on your comment. And other than the two words, you're on mute, the word of the year is definitely going to be guidelines, and how we can start to frame what those guidelines look like. I would really encourage each and every one of you to reach out to your legislators, to me, to the chairwoman's office with your ideas, and not to forget that other states, other countries are more open than we are here in California. So what's working? What evidence can we find? What data can we find? And use that so we don't have to reinvent the wheel in every aspect here. And I also want to just pose this question of capacity, and how capacity for each of the venues and each of the industries that have been so impacted, how capacity is tied to their sustainability, especially with our smaller venues. So I just want to thank you for your time, and we hear you and look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you. And with that, we have 4 more presenters, and they are definitely last, but they are certainly not least. So we will move to Ruth Carlton, who is the Director of Festival Venue Operations, Another Planet Entertainment. Welcome, Ruth.
Oh, thank you very much. Casey Loudermilk, who's the next presenter, is going to join me in this. Hello, Madam Chair and committee members. Casey,
welcome. And yes, you mentioned Casey Loudermilk, the Assistant Manager of Bill Graham Silvic Auditorium, will be part of the presentation as well. Okay.
Yep, indeed. Hello, just looking to share the slideshow. There we go.
Got it. Great.
All right.
And I are here from Another Planet Entertainment. We are the largest independent concert promoter in California. We present over 700 shows a year, hosting over 1.5 million live music fans. Our venues range from a 500 capacity club to a 225,000 person 3-day music festival in Golden Gate Park. Independent venues and concert promoters are anchor businesses in your communities. According to a recent economic impact study, for every $1 spent on a concert ticket, $12 is generated in the local economy at bars, restaurants, lodging, and transportation, which means the economic impact of independent venues in California is estimated at over $13 billion a year.
Since the shutdown, we've all become newfound industry advocates, emerging from behind the curtains and engaging with the National Independent Venue Association, or NIVA, a group of tenaciously independent venue owners, festivals, and promoters. Born in April 2020 in response to COVID-19, NIVA has over 3,000 members across the country. We have forged regional coalitions from San Diego, Orange County, Los Angeles, the Bay Area to Sacramento. A full year of Another Planet concerts have been canceled, including our major music festival, Outside Lands 2020. If we can't produce Outside Lands 2021, that will be over $150 million in lost revenue to the Bay Area economy and the equivalent of over 2,000 full-time jobs lost, in addition to it being a major revenue loss to the city of San Francisco's general fund. We're the first to close, last to reopen, no revenue, and all the overhead costs. To date, over 300 independent venues across the country have permanently closed. In addition, 95% of workers have been let go or furloughed due to the pandemic. This includes not only union theatrical labor, but also bartenders, security, catering, janitorial, sound and lighting companies, truck drivers, and many more. As NIVA, we successfully advocated for the Save Our Stages Act to be included in the recently passed COVID relief package. However, we have yet to see an application for this grant program. The program will be a much needed lifeline, but as this hearing makes apparent, we have yet to see our finish line. It's clear that there will need to be a patchwork of relief at all levels of government to ensure that there won't be a mass cultural extinction in our communities. We have seen smaller markets invest in the survival of their creative economy during this shutdown. For example, Oregon has invested $50 million, Maryland at $30 million, and many more.
The good news about reopening concerts and festivals is that you have an industry of public assemblage and safety experts who get sidelined with nothing else to do but research and prepare for a safe reopening. Over the last 10 years as an industry, we have gone to great lengths to respond and adapt to a growing number of threats. Active shooters and threats of terrorism prompted the quick adoption of magnetometers, clear bag policies, multi-agency on-site command centers, and hostile vehicle mitigation. These changes represent a 25% increase to our expenses, but our charge is first and foremost to create safe environments. Mass gatherings, inclement weather, workplace safety, this is what we, as the live event industry, work on and plan for. We are the best prepared to meet the challenges of creating a COVID-safe event. The economics of festivals and concerts don't work if they are not at full scale. Promoters, venues, and artists essentially have the same expenses whether the room is at 20% or 100% sold. Reopening guidelines only for socially distant events will not bring us back. Festivals and concerts need a substantial runway to get open. To produce a concert, we need months of lead time to confirm artists, market shows, sell tickets, and hire vendors and staff.
We are asking the state to give us a seat at the table to help develop plans to reopen safely at full capacity. When we reopen, we will again be a major economic driver. If we can't reopen, we need your help to stay alive. In the past, we have shouldered the escalating costs to keep our concerts safe, never compromising our efforts and never reaching out for help. But this is a situation we can't see our way through alone. We look forward to engaging with you to develop targeted financial relief for shuttered independent venues and promoters. Concerts bring diverse groups of people together. This type of unity is something that is so needed right now in our state and our country. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And as you can see, we kind of have three presenters related to major concerts and entertainment. I can tell you personally that I too miss concerts, and I know many of my friends and neighbors just cannot wait. We also take serious the vaccinations that are happening and need to leave this hearing by sending a strong message that we can reopen safely, and that many of you that are on this call are in the business to do exactly that. Our last two presenters are related to our museums, our California Association of Museums and the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. So we will welcome Celeste DeWald, who is Executive Director of California Associations of Museums. Welcome, Celeste.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for inviting me to present this morning on the impact of COVID-19 on museums. The California Association of Museums' definition of museums is nonprofit and educational institutions that make unique contributions to communities by interpreting and preserving the things of this world. That includes organizations that collect objects such as art, history, and natural history museums. But it also includes non-collecting organizations like science centers and children's museums, and those with living collections like aquariums, zoos, and botanical gardens. Many people visit museums, more than the number who attend professional sporting events. And museums are economic engines, and their financial health is in the best interests of our economy. Before I underscore the dire consequences of COVID-19, let me shine a light on some of the positive outcomes. Practically overnight, the way museums deliver their educational content has shifted. If a museum wasn't already delivering tours and programs online, they are now, just when the public, students, and teachers need it the most. You've heard about some of the ways museums are directly responding to the crisis and serve their communities as COVID-19 testing sites, distance learning hubs, food pantries, voting centers, and now offering to be vaccination sites. Despite this creativity, the reality is that museums are closed, and that is having very real negative impacts on their financial stability and is curbing their ability to fully serve the public. Many museums have reopened across the country. Based on a survey in mid-October, 71% of museums across the nation are open. But in California, Indoor museums are not allowed to reopen in purple tier counties. With 99.9% of California's population in a purple tier right now, the vast majority of museums across the state are closed and have been for almost a year. Our association and others have been advocating for parity in the state's blueprint with shopping malls. There is no plausible, evidence-based explanation for museums to be closed when shopping malls and even for-profit art galleries are open. The Los Angeles Times editorial board, prominent mayors across the state, and 27 legislators, including you, Madam Chair, have all expressed support for this position. Museums are simply not the environments that are causing an increase in transmissions. They are capable of operating safely. Our association estimates that California museums are losing $22 million a day during statewide closures. This is due to loss of admissions, store sales, event rentals, fundraising events, and more. Museums' operating reserves are diminishing and won't last much longer. Nearly a third of museum directors are unsure if their museum will survive the pandemic. What can you, as our state leaders, do to support California museums? Join us in trying to persuade the administration to let museums reopen at the same capacity as shopping malls. Support the governor's proposed COVID-19 relief funding for cultural institutions, but increase the amount to $50 million. Allow nonprofit cultural institutions of all sizes to apply for relief funding. Prioritize organizations with less access to other relief programs, such as the Federal Shuttered Venue Operators Grants. Museums that do not have an auditorium or theater with fixed seating are not eligible for this grant. We look forward to working closely with you, other legislators, and the administration to craft an effective relief program. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Hi, I'll follow on Celeste. I'm Michael Govin, Director of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. And Madam Chair, thank you for this event. We've heard about the tragic impact of this closure on us economically, artistically, on the health of our communities. LACMA, the largest art museum in the Western United States, has been closed for 10 months. I'd like to focus on the positive. And following on Celeste, respectfully request that you encourage art museums, encourage the administration to open us now, even in purple tier, because we already have the guidelines to reopen. In fact, we helped to develop those guidelines for art museums that have been in use since June. And as Celeste said, since October, as of October, over 2 million people had safely visited art museums. We're ready to go. We can give you the protocols. And LA actually was the only major metropolitan area to never reopen. What a competitive disadvantage that is for California and for our communities, for our artists, for jobs. It's essential that we can reopen. In fact, I would say that you couldn't find a safer indoor space than an art museum in California. Safety is built in and has been enhanced. We have monitored controlled environments thanks to our security and visitor services team. They can encourage and enforce mask wearing and physical distancing. We're naturally touchless. Who hasn't been into a museum and been told not to touch in other times? We have wide open spaces, unlike a lot of retail. We have massive air filtration systems. We have thorough cleaning anyway, and that's been enhanced further. We have online ticketing, and we can adjust our audiences. You want it at 25%, you want it at 10%, and back up to 40. We can do it, and we do it with one-to-one communication with our audience. You have to fill out a questionnaire where we can have a health screening, promote protocols. We can create contact tracing through that. We have temperature checks when you get there. When you get there, the galleries are one-way traffic with marks on the floor. Most retail doesn't come close to the level of safety that we have to offer. We're ready and willing to share these guidelines. We have already with the rest of the nation and in California. We're ready to restart the arts, the economy, jobs, to serve communities, to help people recover from stress, to learn, to be inspired, and we need to do it now safely. It is really painful to be a public service like ours and closed when we know we can be part of the solution. And this new data of all of these other cities and museums being open shows that it is safe to be in museums, and we should use museums to help empower California, the arts, the economy, and all of us through this.
What are we going to do about the public comments?
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for those comments. We really have heard quite a bit today, and every one of your testimonies really adds to the record, adds to the urgency of what we need to do as a state, and we are gonna row down, if you want to say this, river together, and as we do that, I think we're gonna see the results we want. With that, we are going to have to end this, so if you do have public comments, we're going to ask you, we are going to ask you to submit those to the record, and we do have our Assembly member, Adhere Nazarian, that does have some final comments and has been listening intently. Assembly member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I had to step back in to ask a question to the CEO of LA County Museum of Art. Thank you for being with us today. Just wanted to know from your experience, Michael, what conversations have you had with the county public health? I find it astonishingly interesting that the malls just down the street from me are open, which is good, it's important, but that museums, especially museums of large scale that have much open spaces and can be managed to make sure that the inflow of individuals doesn't reach capacities that will be detrimental to anyone's health. So given all the things that we can do to make sure that museums become a source of refuge, I mean, at a time like this with 3 young kids especially, we've constantly looked to see where we can go. Want to know what some of the conversations have been and where the challenges have been, and again, how can we help, and specifically for LA area, how can the LA delegation also step in and help, but then maybe help all throughout the state as well with all of our colleagues here.
Thank you. Yes, actually, when we developed these protocols that are being used nationwide, they were developed with Los Angeles City and Los Angeles County and third-party consultants, Boston Consulting Group. We were ready to reopen in July, and we shared our protocols with everyone. LA County, we've been working closely with Dr. Ferrer in LA. In fact, she loves museums as touchless environments, but it's California that put museums in the lower category. And as you know, LA can't be, it has to be more restrictive, not less restrictive than California. So I do believe, I can't speak for those authorities, but given we worked so closely with them, I think if California were to speak with them, they would realize that that LA had prioritized the arts because we are safe and we can be part of the solution. In fact, we can keep people from traveling because there's a lot to do at home. So we're ready. I think it's California and LA need to communicate better, and I think California can recategorize museums to their proper status, and then we can reopen ASAP.
Thank you for that question, Assembly Member, and for your answer that really does hit at the heart of where some of this frustration in California has been, which is exactly what you say, Assembly Member. Why can we have some people or many people going into malls or large retail, and what it appears to be, no mask mandate, no temperature taking, whereas we know, like for example, Disney is taking temperatures even to enter downtown Disney, hand washing stations. all types of cast members available to encourage, even if a mask slips down. So this is the fundamental question, and I do think it's got to be answered. I erred. We do have a public speaker up in our chambers, and we're looking way up at the top of the gallery. Welcome.
Hello, Madam Chair and members. Alex Torres with Strategies 360 on behalf of the Capital Venues Coalition, representing venues here in Sacramento, also in solidarity with independently owned venues from throughout the state. Madam Chair, you asked, to put it simply, investment in the arts economy, namely the live independent music venues, is an investment in California's economic recovery. As my colleagues from another planet mentioned, Maryland, for example, allocated $30 million for their independent live music venues. Members, in California, these are thousands of jobs. The economic impact is broad and far-reaching. I would appreciate the consideration in the hearing today. I think this is critical. Reopening is a key part of this equation, but the other half is what we have to do to be able to keep those venues from shuttering in the meantime. So we look forward to working with yourself, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, your staff, as well as the members of the committee to figure out what that lifeline looks like. And we appreciate, again, your attention to this important issue and your attention to figuring out how we save our stages here in California. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And once again, to those online listening to us, to every one of our panelists, we sincerely thank you. All of your comments, your data, your information, and your slides will go on record. And we certainly have built a very robust, if you want to say, executive summary here that will go directly to the governor's office from our office. I would like to say that we are also working on a tourism bill that would be working with Senator McGuire related to an investment for tourism and marketing through the state of California. I'm a joint author on that. My vice chair here, Assemblymember Suzette Martinez-Valderas, and I will be introducing a theme park bill to re-look at the tiers that theme parks are in, again, knowing that it's not just the guidelines, but it's also the tiers that some of these partners are in that make it very, very difficult to plan for any type of future here in the state of California. And we want not only our economy to bounce back, but we want thousands and thousands of people in California to start to have hope for our great state again. With that, thank you everybody who put this committee together, this informational hearing, and be safe. Thank you.